Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Philip J. Pear, the Honorable Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, Chancellor, and I do wish to acknowledge our visiting Speaker of the House from St. Lucia, Mr. Claudius Francis, Vice-Chancellor, Ministers of Government, Leader of the Opposition, Special Guest Speaker, the Most Honorable P.J. Patterson of Jamaica, Heads of Missions and other members of the Diplomatic Corps, esteemed judges, ladies and gentlemen. Some paths choose us. Growing up, everyone said I should be a lawyer, but I rebelled against that because I was determined to save the world and law seemed to be only about money. So I signed up for management. But then my head girl, Joanne Julian, persuaded me that law is good for social reform and I should be a lawyer, so I switched. So law chose me. I thought too that administration would stifle academic freedom and straitjacket me, not to mention health issues and living in two countries. I was content to be the go-to background person until, literally on my hospital bed in France, Cave Hill Law Dean McIntosh rang and said, "Rose-Marie, I have made you my deputy dean." He would not hear no, so at that time, leadership chose me. At each rung, it was my colleagues who urged me forward. Blame former principal Eudine Barito, because she first told me some years ago, "You have to be the next principal of Cave Hill." When she heard that people were asking me about judiciary, she retorted, "No, we can't afford you to be silenced as yet." I began to think I should do this. And I have been fortunate to be able to marry my legal career with my passion, creative impulse, and philosophy, even my love of nature. Law allowed me to speak up for those who could not, to amplify their voices in the search for social justice and help forge a Caribbean society of which we could be proud. For me, just as law is a social engineer, scholarship serves to fuel advocacy and development and advance humanity. Many find it surprising that I do not focus on court work. Actually, I had planned to lecture only for 3 years, but academia provides the intellectual stimulation, challenge, and change that drives and sustains me. People often call me an activist or change agent, as you heard, but my impetus then and now was simply to be a disruptor of the status quo where it did not truly work for its purpose or for the majority of our citizens. In truth, that has been a characteristic since early childhood. It seems inevitable that I landed at the UWI, itself created with 33 medical students, the Caribbean change makers of their time. The foundation that shaped me, a family of 8 children, strong-minded, highly intellectual and argumentative, taught me confidence. You had to fight to get a word in, and gave me an inquiring mind. An egalitarian ethos seemed natural with a mother, a brilliant black woman from Grenada, and a white privileged father who broke all social ties to be with the love of his life, whom he met on the train. They came to Arima in the late 1950s, ostensibly to open the first sports and toy shop, but really to escape what we now term race discrimination. Every year, the Arima Tennis Club would invite him alone, Mr. Jean-Marie Alphonse Antoine, and not his black wife. This might have sown the seeds for my social activism, and some have said rebellion. Music, painting, poetry, reading, writing plays, and calypsos, and even astronomy were the norm in my household, a space rich with robust and reflective discussions on the issues of the day. If, as has been said, my work is original and probing, it is no doubt because of that heritage. With 6 going to UWI and 3 scholarship winners, my family was clearly drawn to the rigor and thrust of academia. At one time, 3 Antoines were lecturing at UWI St. Augustine at the same time. One in math, Dr. Robin, one in English, Dr. Jean, and me in law. They must have thought we were a mafia. The intangibles, values, fairness, character, intellect, service, and courage were valued more than material things and big jobs. Special math more attractive than medicine, one even becoming a nun. The hope to be the rich lawyer, me, chose legal academia instead. The majestic Arima Mountains and the hiking trails of the Aserite Nature Center perhaps gave me a tendency to aim high and believe anything is possible. Incidentally, I was the first, if not only, person to be married at Aserite. We planted a powder puff tree, and my husband was warned that if that tree ever died, well, kaput. For many years, he religiously visited that tree, and it is still standing. My teacher's proud boast that Rose-Marie, prefect and head girl, always questions, fights for her classmates, was my poor mother's exasperation. She would say, "You tell Rose-Marie A, she has to answer B, C, and D." But then I got $10 and a medal for being born an independence baby, supposedly the reason for my fierce independent spirit. No surprise then that when I was arrested trying to protect my protesting students at Cave Hill and my husband, then Prime Minister, was called, he would have said famously, "Rose-Marie can take care of herself." A student gave me a cup, "You deserve a drink." And Vice-Chancellor Nettleford wrote, thanking me for taking care of the children. That inquiring spirit has served me in good stead in both my legal and administrative career, where so often things do need to be interrogated and to change. Whether it be denying migrant children education, or why persons must stay on remand 15 to 20 years and more, or mindless bureaucracy. Looking back, I see the trajectory of my life, even the Santa Rosa youth group that I was in, doing charitable work, feeding families, repairing houses, and witnessing firsthand the often unseen and hidden poverty and inequity in our society helped fashion me. I also noticed that what I saw in the youth group was invisible to my convent friends. Unawareness, a sense of denial or even apathy was and is typical for many. So my family and Arima formed me. However, it was the UWI that honed me, first as a student, later as an academic and administrator. The diverse strands of my work in several legal disciplines intersect. Many wonder why, with a PhD in financial law and specialist in labor law, I have focused so much on rights, equity, and justice. The reason is that very early on I realized that the sine qua non of all the work I could possibly do as a lawyer and academic was rooted in social justice. Ultimately, the common denominator is wanting to improve lives. As Nobel laureate Amartya Sen said, human rights is the key to development, and it is now acknowledged by the SDGs. More recently, billionaire hardcore business people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs have also located social justice and rights as the core values that shape civilization. I intend to place this at the center of what we do at the UWI St. Augustine. Thank you. For me, the meaning of civil liberties, like equality, resides in economic and social rights, enshrined in education, health, work, water, and the environment. When the big buildings and grandiose schemes are gone, what will be remembered is the collective humanistic intellectual force that resides in the UWI. This is no esoteric stance. The negative effects of a failure to secure equity, decent work, protect the vulnerable and marginalized in our societies is visible. It impacts productivity, crime, the family, and even ultimately the economy. Interestingly, human rights used to be a bad word. When I established a discrimination law course in the 90s, there was no legislation. I have seen it become mainstream. Indeed, since COVID, everyone is an expert in human rights. My task in people empowerment involves harnessing our vast UWI talent, reclaiming the collective UWI identity and magic, and proclaiming it to the world. While our significant UWI contribution has not diminished, it has become somewhat invisibilized. Individual consultants flourish, but UWI's collective voice and presence need to be stronger. The housewife must appreciate that the yam or the sanitizer she buys in the supermarket are innovations from our labs. We are too often the quiet soldiers in not so quiet revolutions. My job is to ensure that we remain visible, that all stakeholders look to the UWI to do the important developmental work of the region and to nurture our staff to be able to be champions of change. This in itself can increase our market value and bring tangible economic benefits. First steps are our Newsday Sunday series, UWI on the Ground, launched last week, featuring our top scientists, and our Caribbean Beat feature, which Honorable P.J. Patterson saw on the plane. I myself have been fortunate to have been engaged in pioneering consultancy work, whether it be harmonizing CARICOM labor law, the catalyst for labor law reform in the region, which ushered in unfair dismissal, equality, safety, and other laws, or HIV, migrant justice, leading an international drafting team hired by the UK government to restore democracy to the TCI, defending the juristic principles of the Caribbean offshore financial industry against the double standards of the onshore countries 25 years ago, but is now back in the news because of unfair banking laws. My CARICOM CSME report, or even more recently, ganja reform. These jurisprudential innovations required creativity and daring to go against the status quo. The labor code I drafted in St. Lucia is still the only law with HIV protection, and in the Bahamas, preventing the exploitation of what I call permanently temporary workers. Some of what I fought for in the early days, such as when CARICOM asked me to redefine the HIV rights approach for a broader non-discrimination agenda, is now accepted. But many disagreed with me then. So it has not been without controversy. You try effecting labor law reform in a task force with unions and employers, or marijuana reform in a town hall full of church people and rastas. Minister, you remember, right? And it is debatable whether I got more blows for speaking out about too high lawyer fees in my address to the opening of the law term or on mandatory vaccination. It is our duty, mine and the universities, to inform debate on important socio-legal issues. As Martin Luther King said, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. I am grateful to have had the opportunity to do such fascinating legal and social reform, developmental work throughout the region, my dream. It is a joyous feeling when one's outputs do not sit on a shelf, but breathes life and effects real change to laws and to lives. Later, this launched me on the international plane at the OAS, UN, and beyond. But undoubtedly, none of this could have been achieved without the UWI, which gave me the start and support. As a young lecturer in 1991, my dean, Liverpool, and principal Sir Keith Hunt took a chance on me and gave me the consultancy for the CARICOM labor law project, which had stalled. I refused payment, but the rewards were tenfold. This was the impetus for the diverse consultancies and body of work that have borne visible fruit, including an invitation to work at the ILO Geneva. You understand then my commitment to harness the talent at St. Augustine. I cherish to my colleagues along the way who have inspired, encouraged, and supporting me, even nominating me twice for the VC's Award of Excellence. I treasure the soldiers from NGOs and churches and governments, international organizations, and people from all walks of life who walked many difficult paths with me, demanding change. In my journey, students hold a special place. Not having children of my own, it has been a special joy and responsibility to care for our young people, help shape their lives positively, and be inspired by them. But my work is not yet finished, and being principal gives me the opportunity to broaden its scope and identify the inheritors of that work. As an avid gardener, I want to grow and cultivate people and institutions. Let me be the conduit, the builder. Some of that was my developmental focus as dean, establishing the clinic, bidding for faculty donor projects, new directions like oil and gas law, the faculty's historic litigation on disability and remand. Colleagues were invited to lead on important issues like children's rights and indigenous peoples. But as principal, there is a broader landscape and opportunity. And if we walk with integrity, others will follow. The UWI gives me inspiration and energizes me. This is why I hope to reestablish our senior common room. It was at the Cave Hill SCR. I thought you would like that. It was at the Cave Hill SCR that I formed bonds with other colleagues in other disciplines which nurtured and broadened my work and led to interdisciplinary publications. Every university needs a thinking space to create synergies with colleagues. I am guided by my belief in our exceptional nature as Caribbean people and an imperative to make a positive contribution to society. We are as intelligent, creative, talented, and capable as anyone, anywhere, and our abilities find their greatest expression in service. I am fortunate to be part of an institution that gives me the opportunity to work so closely in alignment with these values. So often I have seen Caribbean academics and students shine at international fora and at the top universities. Some are in the audience here today. My philosophy has always been that a university, this campus, must be entrenched in its community to have relevance, a vibrant, impactful, and revered social actor with cutting-edge research. I want to expand the UWI from the classroom to the communities. Scholarship should be taken to the people. It is then that our research, our teaching, will be grounded and transformative. And in this goal, we should partner not just with governments and the private sector, but with NGOs. And we have started. Last month, we went to Moruga. UWI can indeed touch people and change lives. My most poignant memory from my accident is hearing that remand prisoners, clients, telephoned my sister, worried, and actually cried. This was the power of the institution and the hope we can bring. In my frame of education for true development, I propose a more progressive approach to access, expanding to the underserved and forgotten. We have been insensitive to the socioeconomic and sociocultural constraints, even ethnic and gender, to accessing education, especially in our professions. Admissions can no longer be based purely on CAPE results. This was the rationale for the McCandle Daaga Scholarship, giving social activists access to the elitist law school. We also provided quotas for law enforcement and persons with disabilities, but more needs to be done. I have asked my colleagues to reconsider and refashion our approach to access to the UWI to encompass a broader vision that examines deep structural issues in the society and to consider other desirable attributes that we wish to inculcate in our graduates. This is not path-breaking. The Rhodes and other scholarships emphasize not just academics, but leadership and extracurricular and other things. Importantly, the St. Augustine Campus has a key role to play in healing our wounded society. I believe in its power as a unifying force invoking patriotic consciousness. The voice of the UWI St. Augustine must be neutral, confident but respectful, probing but at the same time reassuring, because of the knowledge that within our UWI there resides competencies and talents that give hope for the future. I remain a regionalist. I'm also a proud inter-campus citizen experiencing 3 campuses, as you heard, before returning here as Dean Law with an assignment to build a new faculty. The only trainee at Norman Manley Law School, I spent more time on artistic exploits than in the law classroom. Art at the Edna Manley School, bringing Paul Keynes to Jamaica, touring the entire Jamaica with the UWI singers under the esteemed Noel Dexter, and that was your piece you heard the very talented Natalia Doppel sing. And I want to also say that the Vice-Chancellor Beckel's encouragement for students to embrace the UWI regional experience, doing a semester in a different campus, for instance, is not slight. This is how we will understand and trust each other enough to construct a genuine Caribbean community. The UWI itself is a great institution, but I dare say that the St. Augustine campus has some unique strengths which we will leverage. Seismic Unit International Relations Institute, for long the only engineering faculty, the only faculty of agriculture, and other faculties can create synergies and work with a strong multidisciplinary focus because of these. For example, it's a good vantage point to study our NCD epidemic with the nutrition experts in agriculture and the food security imperative. St. Augustine is also physically and psychologically close to 2 commercial and cultural giants, Latin America and Guyana. I hope to be able to use my already strong links due to my OAS work and in Guyana for the benefit of the campus, and we are already working on programs and collaborations. This campus's vision is centered on the huge issues of our time. Decades doing interdisciplinary research and education on climate change, including futuristic agriculture, the blue economy, renewables, its health deficits, have placed us at the forefront of this global threat. Yet, at this moment of urgency, great research is necessary, but not sufficient. We must do more. It is an absolute imperative for us to bring the science, not just to policymakers, but to the people, to have real impact and help to save the planet and ourselves. The average citizen must identify with it, experience it, believe in it. The apathy is frightening. We do not see the connections when a young boy from a poor family gets dengue because there are more mosquitoes, or waterborne diseases from floods, or mudslides because they cut down all the trees, or even our weak immune systems due to poor nutrition caused by leached soil, and the list goes on. The interconnections with poverty are also too opaque. Climate justice and a just transition must be included. An activist approach to the science is required, empowering our Caribbean citizens to make the right choices. Thinking green must become a way of life. And it requires research from the ground up, involving the farmers, clamoring for greener production like natural-based feed, one of our projects by agriculture, by the way. It also demands spearheading initiatives such as industry linkages and conceptualizing tax incentives for green industry and lifestyles. We are acknowledged international thought leaders and power brokers here. To set this example, I have started to green the campus, and I'm working to finalize an agreement with Blue Waters to set up a recycling post. The intersections between climate change and practically every other discipline are now only too obvious, whether it be the food we eat or don't eat, health, transport, education, homes, citizen insecurity, law, sport. This is why, relying on the many UWI experts in the field, as PVC, I spearheaded a multidisciplinary cross-campus postgrad degree in climate studies. I am convinced more than ever that our direction as scholars, centered on solutions, must be interdisciplinary and collaborative. This is as true for entrepreneurship and innovation as it is for climate studies, general science, law, and even the arts, which now relies heavily on digitization. We must become Renaissance thinkers and problem solvers, creating multi-skilled students. Converting our intellectual efforts into monetary gain through a more entrepreneurial thrust, including social entrepreneurship, remains a key agenda for my tenure, as it has been for at least 3 previous administrative regimes. And you saw we have 3 principals here. They were all working on this. This campus has been a UWI leader. I value change, but it must be nuanced with continuity and constancy if we are to build, not broken down for broken down's sake and legacy. We will approach the routine in more enterprising ways, converting into financial products, but a large slice is exciting innovations from our labs and from the imaginations of our scholars. Several of our innovative products are already patented and certified. We continue to source the right manufacturers and investment partners from the private sector to leverage these exciting opportunities to commercialize from lab to shelf, like our patented sealants, roofing compounds, fingerprinting, and so on. Last month, after years, we were finally able to fulfill the dream of our internationally renowned Cocoa Research Center. We obtained funding and awarded a contract for a cocoa factory. We are excited. I also envisage St. Augustine as a thriving cultural center of arts, music, and film with an entrepreneurial base, fitting for the land of calypso, chutney, steel pan, and radio soaps. We will continue to incentivize and provide mentorship to entrepreneurs and startups from both staff and students, promoting this symbiotic relationship between academia and private sector endeavor. I am grateful for the already emerging initiatives and partnerships from giants in our private sector in the first few months of my tenure, such as the Sabga family, respected philanthropists, where plans are underway to establish an Ansi McCall UWI Entrepreneurship Fund. We are also moving ahead with the planned UWI Global Offshore School of Medicine, building on decades of recognized first-rate medical teaching and research. We hope to attract tax incentives for alumni donors under a revamped alumni program and endowment fund. Creating an entrepreneurial culture requires the campus to be agile, leaving behind old ways which have sometimes failed us. Meeting the needs of students and preparing them for this new, more complex world would remain a top priority. These are times when the very relevance of university is being challenged. We need to recalibrate our programming to encourage active and on-the-job learning, and we must also address the new financial realities, whether through high-flex, flexible programming, or internships. Returning to Trinidad, I was actually shocked at the level of student poverty. I realize now that I met only higher income law students at K-Phil because they could afford it. Having to personally come to the aid of so many students for rent and even groceries cements my determination to address these challenges. During COVID, for example, the survey of my law faculty revealed that 65 students out of under 400 had no computer or internet. I disagree with those who say we do not have a duty to help facilitate access. We must have sustainable fees for the campus if we are to survive, but we must also protect our students by speaking more directly with banks, private sector, increasing bursaries, and promoting innovative bond arrangements in exchange for financial assistance and loan schemes. I also hope to have closer linkages and communications with government to better understand and serve the national agenda. Recall that Eric Williams, scholar and nation builder, was a chancellor of this university and helped shape the UWI ethos. Given what I have said about the brilliance and talent of Caribbean people, I lament often the trend peculiar to this country where so many of our young people refuse to come to UWI. This is tantamount to the recolonization of our education. The unfortunate implications include the increase of the brain drain, alienation with the society, pressure on the public purse, and undermined development. And it's no use playing a blame game, but it's a good example of the pothole road paved with good intentions. I applaud the government for reducing the over 600 scholarships that allow winners to go anywhere in the world to study, and they did. I have pledged to do something about it too, not just advocacy, but a more vigorous attempt to do joint degrees with foreign universities to persuade this sector of the value of the UWI degree. Putting people first means understanding. I started my tenure with principal listening sessions. It was an exhilarating and incredibly learning experience to hear not just problems, but ideas for growth. Some we have begun to implement, like a child care creche and staff markets. Today I have outlined the conceptual framework and philosophy for my path forward. Like the old people, I'm a little superstitious about talking too much about detailed plans beforehand. But soon you will be judging me on the deliverables. We, the UWI, the region, have had plenty grand vision. What we sometimes fall short on is the implementation. I have always been the most impatient person I know, but there really is little time to do the things we really want to do and make the changes that we must make. As an unapologetic pragmatist, what I can promise you is that we will build one step at a time. Our dreams are nothing if not backed up by practical action and a sense of purpose. My commitment to the UWI, which has given me so much and to which I have given my best, remains unwavering. As we celebrate our 75th year, together with generations of alumni, we are surging ahead, realigning our resources to meet the challenges in our mission to achieve socioeconomic and ecological sustainability for our region, as we have always done, COVID being the last example. Just my luck, I have come at a time of financial crisis. However, I am confident that the UWI St. Augustine can and will thrive. We will have to work very hard, show great resilience, and harness our creative dynamism, our Caribbean elan. It will not be easy, but as Kaiso poet extraordinaire Dr. Black Stalin told us, we can make it if we try. To the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the region, the UWI is your university. We are a Caribbean asset, and we are focused purposefully on the needs of Caribbean society. In closing, I am forever grateful for the people in my life who have been the fuel in my sometimes sputtering engine through thick and thin over so many decades. At a time like this, I remember my angels who guard me from above, Anne, Carnegie, my late brother Tom, and my own parents, Bernadine and Jean-Marie. I remember two of my mentors and cheerleaders who cherish, fuel, and uplift me, too many to mention all. My husband is a loving rock and fountain of wisdom. My sister Therese and her entire Dominican convent pray for me every day, and I know I'll need even more prayers. A wonderful family, great friends, some flew in from across the region. Thank you for making the trip, especially with these airplane prices. I am thankful for the goodwill and support of so many colleagues and staff, demonstrated by the many messages and the cooperation received. And thank you for the lovely procession as well. Every day more and more, coming forward to volunteer as we create the change. I am grateful for the faith placed in me to lead this campus. I will continue to work to keep and build that trust. Thank you, Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, management teams, planning committee, marketing, registrars, teams, DFM, security, procession colleagues, all of you here today, for your support and this wonderful, uplifting ceremony. I am not one for grandiose terms like legacy. When I leave this place, it will be enough for me to have you say, she was useful and got things done.